"Ma'am, if you don't open this door, we're gonna die out here." The voice came muffled through the blizzard, a hoarse plea carried by the wind like a confession. Rosa Alvarez froze mid-step in the service corridor of the Lakeview Motor Inn, her mop handles still dripping. Snow hissed against the metal door, each gust rattling it in its frame. She could hear 9 men outside, their boots crunching ice, one of them pounding with the flat of his hand. The hallway lights flickered dim, casting the kind of trembling light that made the world feel temporary. "Rosa! Don't you dare touch that lock. Mr. Keane's voice crackled through the staff radio clipped to her waist. "They're Bandidos. You let them in, we lose insurance, we lose everything." Rosa stared at the door handle. It gleamed cold and silver, slick with condensation. Duke, the German shepherd on night patrol, stiffened beside her, hackles up, growling at first then suddenly quiet. His ears twitched, he tilted his head as if listening to something deeper than wind. The pounding stopped. The same hoarse voice spoke again, softer this time. "We'll follow your rules, ma'am. No trouble. We just need shelter." Rosa pressed her palm flat against the metal. She could feel the cold bleeding through. Out there, the temperature was 20 below. The kind of cold that made glass snap. Through the frosted window slit, she saw 9 dark shapes. Broad-shouldered. Hunched against the gale. One man's beard was white with ice, his gloveless hands trembling around a helmet. Another leaned against the brick wall, shoulders slumped as if the weight of winter itself pressed on him. Behind them, the parking lot was a sheet of white, cars half buried, the city streetlights gone to ghosts. "Rosa." Keane barked again. "You're not paid to be a hero. Close that door." But the word hero made her throat tighten. She'd heard it once before 15 years ago when the hospital had thanked her for holding a patient's hand as he died alone. She'd been a nurse's aide then. Now she cleaned toilets. The wind screamed, the radio squawked. Duke whined low in his throat. Rosa exhaled and whispered to herself. "God watches doors." Then, louder. "Shoes off. Knives down. Hands where I can see them." She turned the bolt. The metal thunk echoed down the hallway like a gunshot. The door flung open, slamming the wall, wind clawing inside. Snow spilled in like smoke. 9 men in leather and denim stumbled through, half blind from the storm, their jackets stiff with frost. The first one, tall and built like an old oak, set his helmet down carefully on the floor and said, "Colonel Morrison." "Ma'am. We'll behave." He raised both hands, palms out. The others followed, silent, obedient. Rosa blinked through the swirling snow. "Boiler room," she said. "It's warm there, you track snow past the line, you mop it yourself." "Yes ma'am," Colonel answered. His voice wasn't the growl she expected, it was measured, almost military. Behind him, one younger biker Knox, she would learn later, shifted uneasily, a folding knife clipped to his pocket. Duke gave a short bark, and Colonel snapped, "Knox. Hands out of pockets." "Yes sir," the boy muttered, stepping back. The hallway filled with the sounds of thawing men boots squeaking, wet gloves peeling, breath fogging the air. Rosa grabbed the coffee urn from her cart. Poured black liquid into paper cups. The smell of burnt beans and metal cutting through the scent of snow. "Drink," she ordered. "You look half dead." Colonel nodded to his men, and one by one they took the cups like recruits in line. "Appreciate it, ma'am," Colonel said, meeting her eyes. "Storm caught us on Highway 7. GPS went down. We saw your light." "You saw trouble, that's what you saw," Rosa replied. But she couldn't help noticing their manners, the way they called each other sir and doc and tank. It wasn't gang chaos, it was formation. Discipline. They move like soldiers, she thought. The lights flickered again, dimming to a pulse. Duke growled, then trotted toward the electrical closet, nose to the crack of the door. The hair on his neck bristled. "What is it, boy?" Rosa asked. Colonel followed the dog's line of sight. "Heat," he said quietly. "That panel shouldn't be that warm." He looked at her. "Permission to check?" Rosa hesitated, then handed him the ring of master keys clipped to her belt. "You break anything, you fix it," she said. "Fair enough." Colonel unlocked the door. Steam billowed out, smelling of ozone and wet insulation. "You've got a leak over the junction box," said a man with a grease-stained patch reading DOC. "We'll cut the breaker before this whole place catches fire." Rosa's stomach dropped. A fire tonight would mean everyone in the hotel freezing before help could come. "Do it," she said. "And don't electrocute yourselves." The men moved with efficiency. Wrenches clinked, wires clicked, the hum of power ebbed to silence. Within minutes, the lights steadied. Colonel closed the panel, nodded to Rosa. "Fixed. Temporary wrap. You should tell management in the morning." Rosa gave a small, bitter laugh. "Management's already calling the cops on you." Colonel's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Instead, he looked at her the way people look when they're trying to memorize a kindness. "You risked your job for strangers," he said. "You think that's safe?" Rosa poured herself the last of the coffee, hands shaking just a little. "Safe's never been what keeps people alive," she said. Duke came to her side, pressing his body against her leg, warm and solid. The wind still screamed outside, but inside, the world felt strangely calm. "You can stay till dawn," she said at last. "Then you're gone. And no one breathes a word." "Understood." Colonel removed his jacket, draped it over the nearest chair. His sweatshirt underneath read, "Detroit VA Medical Center Volunteer." Rosa's eyes flicked to it, then to him. "You a vet?" "We all are." "Figures." She handed him a towel. "You clean up good, soldier." "Yes, ma'am," he said, and smiled, not the grin of a roughneck, but the quiet smile of a man who knows what gratitude costs. Rosa turned away before he could see her eyes sting. She busied herself wiping puddles from the tile, Duke padding behind her. Somewhere upstairs, the wind pushed against the building. But the boiler rumbled steady, the air filled with the faint sweetness of steam and coffee. She could feel the weight of Keane's words waiting for her at sunrise: termination, liability, rules. Yet none of it seemed as heavy as the thought of 9 bodies freezing behind that locked door. She leaned against the wall, closed her eyes, and let the hum of the pipes drown out the storm. For the first time in years, she wasn't just the maid. She was the one who opened the door. The boiler thumped like an old heart fighting to keep its rhythm. Rosa stood by the folding table, watching steam rise from the coffee urn. The men had settled in now, spread around the narrow boiler room like pieces of furniture, their heavy coats hanging from pipes, boots lined neatly by the door. Duke lay between them, snoring, one ear flicking whenever the wind howled outside. It was almost midnight, the worst of the storm still clawing the windows. Rosa's fingers traced the edge of the paper cup, its warmth fading fast. She wondered how long before Mr. Keane sent security or the police came knocking. The thought made her stomach knot, but she pushed it away. There were 9 men alive because she opened that door. That had to count for something. Colonel Morrison leaned against the boiler, arms crossed, eyes half closed. He looked more like an old teacher than the biker gang leader Keane had described on the radio. His hair was streaked with gray, his face carved with the kind of lines earned by sun, sand, and time. When he caught her watching, he nodded once. Polite. "You've got courage, ma'am," he said quietly. "Not many would have done what you did tonight." Rosa shrugged, pretending to tidy the sugar packets. "Courage doesn't pay rent." He chuckled, low in his chest. "Neither does fear." That made her smile despite herself. The others had begun to thaw, joking softly, rubbing their hands near the vents. They were careful not to smoke, careful not to drip. Military neatness, she thought again. The way they spoke to each other, short, efficient, wasn't the talk of criminals. It was the language of men who had been told to survive. Rosa hadn't planned on saying anything, but the question slipped out anyway. "You boys really Bandidos?" Colonel glanced over. "Used to be, some of us. Most are vets now. We ride together. It's less about trouble, more about keeping each other from disappearing." "Disappearing?" she echoed. "It happens," he said. "Men come home and can't find their footing. Some of us help dig them out before it's too late." His tone was matter of fact, but his eyes drifted to the window where frost feathered the glass. Rosa knew that look. It was the same one she saw in patients' families when she'd worked at the hospital, that faraway grief that pretended to be stoicism. She set a cup of fresh coffee beside him. "For what it's worth," she said, "you don't look like trouble." "Depends on who's looking," he said, and lifted the cup in a small salute. The lights flickered again, a dull buzz from somewhere above. Rosa looked at the clock. 12:30. Keane's shift ended at 6. If she could just make it that far, maybe she could talk her way out of this. Or maybe not. Keane was the kind of man who remembered every rule but never remembered your name. She picked up a towel and started wiping the damp from the concrete floor. Her knees ached, the way they always did when the weather turned bad. She had once thought those knees would carry her through nursing school. She'd been 22, newly married, full of plans. Then Robert got laid off from the plant, and bills came faster than paychecks. She quit school, for a while, started cleaning to fill the gap. For a while, became 3 decades. Her son left for Arizona, after the divorce, promising to visit. He never did. She lived alone now, in a small apartment above a laundromat where the dryers hummed all night. It was quiet. And sometimes that quiet hurt more than the noise ever did. "You okay, ma'am?" Colonel's voice broke through her thoughts. She blinked, realizing she'd been staring at the same wet patch on the floor for too long. "Fine," she said, forcing a smile. "Just thinking." "Thinking can be dangerous," he said. "Storms make folks remember things they'd rather forget." She snorted softly. "You sound like a preacher." "Nah," he said. "Just a man who's been stuck in too many storms." Another gust hit the walls, shaking dust from the vents. Rosa heard the groan of metal and the whistle of the wind sneaking through cracks. The men tensed, instinctively scanning exits. One of them, the youngest Knox, rubbed his hands together. "We got any word from the convoy?" he asked Colonel. "Radio's dead," Morrison replied. "Cell towers are down. We waited out." Knox sighed. "Figures." Rosa caught the edge of worry in his voice. He couldn't have been more than 25, his face still too soft for the leather jacket. She remembered boys like him from the hospital home from the desert, polite, haunted. She poured him another cup of coffee. "Here," she said. "You look like you need it more than I do." He took it, embarrassed. "Thanks, ma'am. You got a mama?" she asked, half teasing. "Yes, ma'am." "Then drink it before it gets cold." He grinned and obeyed. For a while, silence settled again, warm and steady. Rosa almost let herself believe morning would come quietly. But then the radio on her belt crackled to life. "Security to housekeeping," a voice said. "Report status on boiler room. Mr. Keane wants confirmation no guests inside." Rosa froze. Colonel's eyes met hers. "You don't have to lie for us," he said softly. "We'll take it from here." "Quiet," she whispered, clicking the radio. "All clear, just me and Duke. Boiler's fine. Power stable." A pause, then, "Copy that." The line went dead. She exhaled, shoulders dropping. Colonel gave her a slow nod. "You didn't have to do that either." "I'm already in deep," she said. "Might as well drown with company." He smiled faintly. "You remind me of my wife." "Is that good or bad?" "Depends on the day." Rosa laughed under her breath. "She'd like you," he added. "She runs a diner up north. Doesn't scare easy." Then we'd get along. For a few heartbeats, the storm seemed to ease, its roar softening. Rosa allowed herself a fragile hope. Maybe the police weren't coming. Maybe they'd get through the night. Then Duke stirred suddenly, lifting his head, a low growl humming in his chest. Rosa followed his gaze toward the hallway door. Footsteps approached, heavy, uneven, crunching snow off boots. She felt her pulse quicken. Colonel stood, motioning for his men to stay quiet. The handle rattled once, then again. "Housekeeping," came a muffled voice. "Maintenance check." Rosa's breath caught. It was Henry, the security guard. He worked the same shift for 12 years, a decent man but loyal to rules. "Stay back," she whispered to the bikers. She opened the door a crack. Henry stood there, his cheeks red from cold, his flashlight cutting a beam through the dim. "You all right, Rosa? Keane said you were acting strange." "Fine," she said quickly. "Power's fixed." "I was just," Duke barked once, loud enough to echo down the hall. Henry frowned, trying to peer inside. "Who's in there?" Rosa stepped sideways, blocking his view. "Nobody. Duke just doesn't like storms." But behind her, someone shifted metal scraping tile. Henry's hand went to his radio. Rosa, what's going on? Colonel's voice, calm as gravel, drifted from the shadows. Sir, we're just taking shelter. No harm meant. Henry's eyes widened. You let them in? Are you insane? They're wanted in half the counties around here. No, Rosa said, her voice sharp. They're veterans. They fixed the wiring. They saved the damn hotel. Henry hesitated, torn between duty and decency. Outside, lightning flared blue through the frosted window. The storm roared again, drowning logic. Henry, please, Rosa said. If they go back out, they'll freeze before they reach the road. He swallowed hard, then lowered the radio. You didn't hear this from me, he muttered. Keane's already called the police. They'll be here in an hour. Rosa's breath left her chest like a blow. An hour? He nodded. I'm sorry, Rosa. I gotta do my job. She wanted to argue, but the words stuck. Henry looked over her shoulder once more, then turned and disappeared into the hallway. The sound of his boots faded. Rosa closed the door, leaned her forehead against the cool metal. Colonel's shadow moved beside her. Police, huh? Yeah, she said. 1 hour. He rubbed his jaw, thinking. That's long enough. For what? To make this right. She didn't know what he meant, but there was something steady in his tone, something that made her believe maybe the night hadn't beaten them yet. Duke settled again by the door, head on his paws. Eyes open. Rosa went back to her cart, poured the last of the coffee, and whispered to herself. Just 1 more hour. The hours stretched like wet rope, heavy and slow, every minute marked by the ticking pipes of the boiler and the distant groan of the storm outside. Rosa moved through the room quietly, checking the coffee urn, folding spare towels, anything to keep her hands busy. Her nerves hummed under her skin. The men sat in near silence now, conserving energy, faces lit by the soft orange glow of the emergency light. Duke's ears flicked every few seconds, always listening, always ready. Colonel Morrison was by the window slit, watching the snow. He hadn't said much since Henry's visit. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm but firm. We'll leave before the police get here, he said. Rosa looked up sharply. You can't. Roads are gone. You step outside, you'll vanish. Ma'am, we've been through worse than a little Michigan blizzard, he said. We don't drag civilians into our trouble. Your trouble? She repeated, setting down the towel. You think this is all about you? You saved the hotel from catching fire. You think Keane's gonna tell the cops that? He'll tell them you broke in. That I helped you. Morrison's gaze shifted back to her, softening. You still got a job to protect. We'll take the blame if we have to. Rosa snorted. That's not how it works, Colonel. You take the blame. They take me too. Guilt by proximity. You think the cops'll believe some maid with a mop over the manager in a tie? He didn't argue. The other men watched in silence, the kind of silence soldiers keep when they know the odds. We're not leaving you behind to face that, Knox said suddenly, his young voice cutting the air. No way. Morrison shot him a look that shut him up, but Rosa noticed the faint twitch of his jaw. Something about that boy reminded her of her son. The same mix of defiance and fear. Outside, the wind screamed against the walls like something alive. The emergency light flickered once, twice, then held steady. Somewhere above them, glass shattered. Rosa jumped. What was that? Probably a window, Morrison said, but even he didn't sound certain. Knox, Diesel, check it. The two men moved quickly down the hall, boots quiet on the tile. Duke followed, tail low, his nose working the air. Rosa felt her pulse beat hard in her throat. Morrison stepped closer, lowering his voice. You trust that security guard? Henry? She asked. He's a good man. Follows rules like they're scripture. But his heart's clean. Then he'll do what his boss tells him, Morrison said. If Keane called the cops, they'll come in loaded for trouble. 9 bandidos holed up in a hotel? They'll bring rifles, not blankets. Rosa swallowed. So what do we do? He looked at her with that quiet, deliberate calm again. We prepare. 10 minutes later, Knox and Diesel returned, snow on their shoulders. Window upstairs gave out, Diesel reported. Second floor east wing, nobody hurt. But the power lines are gone. We're running on the generator now. Rosa exhaled. That explains the flicker. Morrison nodded. Good. That buys us time. For what? Rosa asked again. To keep everyone alive, he said simply. Then to his men. We'll secure the exits. No sudden movements when the cops arrive. Nobody reaches for anything. We let her talk first. Me. Rosa blinked. Colonel. I'm just the cleaning lady. Tonight you're the one in charge, he said. You're the only one they might listen to. The idea made her stomach lurch. But when she looked around 9 men in worn leather, all of them watching her like she was their anchor, something inside her steadied. She wasn't just the maid anymore. She was the one who'd opened the door, who'd chosen compassion over protocol. She squared her shoulders. All right. If the cops come before morning, we do this my way. Nobody yells. Nobody moves. You understand? Yes, ma'am, Morrison said, and the others echoed him softly. The next half-hour passed in an uneasy rhythm. Rosa reheated what was left of the coffee, humming a hymn her mother used to sing when storms shook their old house in El Paso. The sound filled the room like a thread, fragile but strong enough to hold them together. What's that song? Knox asked quietly. Something my mother used to say kept devils away, Rosa said. Maybe it'll work for cops too. That drew a low chuckle from the group. Then, as if on cue, Duke lifted his head and growled. The sound wasn't loud, but it was enough to make every man freeze. A second later came the unmistakable crunch of tires outside. Headlights cut faint beams through the frosted glass. Rosa's breath caught. They're here, Morrison murmured. He moved to the doorway, gesturing for the others to stay back. The lights swung across the lot, stopping at the front entrance. Muffled voices carried through the snow, radio static, the slam of a car door. Rosa could picture it clearly, the cops stepping out, squinting against the wind, hands resting on their holsters. They'll come around to the back, Morrison said. Protocol. Rosa nodded. Then we meet them there. No, ma'am. Colonel, I'm not hiding while men freeze on both sides of a door again, she said sharply. You stay here. Keep them still. She pulled her coat tight, grabbed Duke's leash, and pushed out into the hallway before anyone could stop her. The corridor was dark except for the flicker of the exit light at the far end. Her boots squeaked on the tile, and the cold bit through her coat like teeth. She reached the service door just as it rattled with a heavy knock. Detroit PD. Open up. The voice was deep, authoritative, but not cruel. Rosa took a breath and opened the top latch halfway. Evening, officers. 2 men stood outside, snow crusting their shoulders, flashlights cutting narrow tunnels through the dark. One was young, maybe 30, the other older, face weathered and tired. The older one spoke first. Ma'am, we've got reports of armed bikers inside the property. You seen anyone? Rosa hesitated. There are some men sheltering in the boiler room. They're not armed, not dangerous. They're veterans, sir. They fixed the wiring. The young officer's brow furrowed. Ma'am, you can't keep 9 strangers in a commercial property. It's a liability. So is letting them freeze to death, she said, voice rising despite herself. The older one sighed, rubbing his temple. Look, we just need to make sure everyone's safe. Can you step aside? Duke growled softly. Rosa's grip tightened on the leash. If you come in guns first, you'll scare them. They're already on edge. Let me bring them out, calm. The 2 officers exchanged a look. 5 minutes, the older one said. After that, we come in. She nodded and closed the door. Her heart hammered as she hurried back down the corridor. When she reached the boiler room, all 9 men were standing, silent, waiting. Morrison looked at her. Well? They'll wait 5 minutes, she said. Then it's over. He nodded. That's all we need. For what? To tell the truth. He stepped past her, shoulders squared. She realized then that he wasn't planning to hide or run. He was planning to face them. Rosa followed him to the door, Duke padding beside them. The rest trailed behind, silent as ghosts. When she opened the door again, the wind hit her full in the face, sharp and freezing, but she didn't flinch. The officers raised their lights. Easy, Morrison said, palms open. We're unarmed. Veterans of the 82nd. Got caught in the storm. The young cop blinked, lowering his flashlight. Your vets? Yes, sir. VA cards in the wallet, if you want proof. The lady here saved our hides. The older cop's expression softened just slightly. Let's get everyone warm and sorted. No one's in cuffs tonight if what you're saying checks out. Rosa felt her knees weaken with relief. But she kept standing. Chin up. For a long second, the wind filled the silence between them, and she thought maybe just maybe everything would be fine. Then a voice cut through the night behind her, sharp as a blade. I told you to lock them out, Rosa. Mr. Keane stood in the doorway of the lobby, coat flapping, face red with fury. You'll pay for this. His shout broke whatever fragile peace they had built. Duke barked. The cops turned, hands twitching toward their belts, and Rosa whispered under her breath, God. Not again. The storm howled louder, swallowing the rest. The moment Keane's voice sliced through the storm, the fragile calm shattered. Rosa felt the air change. The wind still howled outside, but inside it was the kind of silence that comes before lightning hits. The officers froze, flashlights cutting through the snow, their hands twitching near their holsters. Colonel Morrison raised his palms higher, voice low and steady. Everyone stand down, he said. No one's here to fight. But Keane kept shouting, his words sharp and slurred with anger. You don't give me orders, biker trash. You broke in, and she helped you. I'm calling corporate and every damn lawyer in this state. He turned to the officers, jabbing a gloved finger at Rosa. Arrest her too. She's in on it. Rosa's throat went dry. She could feel Duke pressing against her leg, muscles tense, reading the danger faster than anyone. Mr. Keane, she said quietly. They didn't break in. I let them in. They saved the hotel. Saved it? Keane barked a laugh that sounded like snapping ice. You've lost your mind, Rosa. You let armed criminals take over my building. You'll never work in this town again. Colonel stepped forward just enough to put himself between Rosa and Keane. Sir, we didn't take over anything. We sought shelter from a life-threatening storm. If you review your electrical system, you'll see we fixed a fault that could have burned this place down. Don't you lecture me. Keane spat. You think I'm going to take a criminal's word over mine? The older officer spoke then, calm but firm. That's enough. Everyone back inside, out of the cold. We'll sort this properly. But Keane ignored him. He shoved Rosa's shoulder with the back of his hand, not hard but enough to humiliate. You're done, Alvarez. Pack your things. You're finished. The heat of embarrassment and fury rose in Rosa's chest. Years of swallowed words and bowed heads boiled up all at once. You're wrong, she said, her voice trembling but strong. You think following rules makes you decent. It doesn't. These men showed me more respect in one night than you have in 10 years. Respect? Keane sneered. They're gang trash, Rosa. You're too stupid to see it. That's enough, Colonel said, and this time there was steel in his tone. He didn't move closer. But the air around him thickened, controlled, dangerous in its calm. The young officer stepped between them, palms out. Everyone relax. Mr. Keane. Sir. Please step back. Keane didn't. You want to protect her? Fine. I'll let the cops drag you out, and maybe she can clean your cell too. Rosa felt something crack inside her, not fear, not shame, something older and fiercer. I've cleaned worse messes than you, Mr. Keane, she said. And I'll still have my soul when this is done. The words surprised even her. The wind roared, slamming the door wide enough to scatter snow into the hall. Duke barked, sharp and warning. In that moment, one of the overhead lines finally gave way outside, snapping with a sound like a whip. The lights inside the hotel flickered, then died completely. Darkness swallowed them all. The officers' flashlights spun wildly. Someone shouted. The emergency alarm began to wail. Rosa's heart pounded as the red glow of the backup lights kicked in, painting every face in ghostly color. Everyone back, the older officer yelled. Downed line, don't move. Keane cursed, stumbling into the wall. Sparks danced at the far end of the parking lot, throwing jagged light through the snow. Rosa grabbed Duke's collar and pressed him close. Colonel, she called. Generator room, it's past the laundry. You can reset it. On it. Morrison barked. Two of his men moved with him, their boots pounding the floor. Rosa could hear their footsteps fade, swallowed by the hum of the alarm. Keane's voice cut through again, panicked now. You've killed the power. Do you have any idea what this'll cost? Would you shut up? Rosa snapped. You'd rather the place burn down than admit you're wrong. The older officer raised his radio. Dispatch. We've got a power failure at Lakeview. Possible downed lines. Backup responding. The signal hissed back static. No comms, the young one said. Storm's blocking everything. Figures. Rosa muttered. We're on our own. For the next 5 minutes, time seemed to stretch and twist. The red emergency lights pulsed through the hallways like a heartbeat. Rosa could hear the bikers working in the distance, metal clanking, shouted directions, the steady rhythm of men who knew what they were doing. Keane paced, muttering about lawsuits. The officers tried their radios again, no luck. Then the lights flickered once more and steadied. The hum of power returned. A wave of warmth flowed through the vents. The generator was back. The alarm fell silent, leaving only the low growl of the wind outside. Colonel reappeared, his coat dusted with snow and soot. System stable, he said. You had ice clogging the vent. We cleared it. The older officer gave a slow nod. You've done good work tonight, sir. Keane stared, jaw tight, unable to speak. Rosa let out a shaky laugh of relief. See? They fixed what your company never bothered to check. You think this changes anything? Keane snapped. They still broke the law. You still defied orders. If following orders means watching people freeze, then maybe the law's the thing that's broken, she said. The older cop looked at her, really looked this time, and there was a flicker of respect in his eyes. Ma'am, he said, we'll need to verify their IDs, but I don't see any reason to make arrests tonight. Everyone's safe. That's what matters. The younger officer nodded in agreement. Keane sputtered. You can't just, they're criminals. They're veterans, the older one corrected. And they've saved your property twice tonight. Morrison said nothing. He just stood. Snow melting on his shoulders. Watching Rosa. Then, quietly, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small coin. It was silver, worn at the edges, engraved with an eagle clutching a shield. Challenge coin, he said. Army issue. Means loyalty, service, honor. He pressed it into Rosa's palm. You earned it. Rosa looked down at the coin, its metal warm from his hand. I didn't do anything special. You opened the door, he said. That's rarer than you think. Keane scoffed. Oh please, save the poetry. Rosa turned to him, her voice steady. You should try it sometime. Might make you human. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then the older officer holstered his radio. All right. Let's get everyone documented and out of this weather. We'll write it up as a shelter assist. No charges. Morrison inclined his head. Appreciate that, sir. Thank your maid, the officer said. She's the one who kept her head. Rosa felt heat rise behind her eyes, not from embarrassment but from something like pride. She hadn't felt that in years. Keane glared at her, his mouth tight. You're finished here, Alvarez. You think one act of charity wipes out insubordination? She met his eyes. You can fire me if you want. But you'll remember this night every time you turn on a light in this building. He started to reply, then stopped. Outside, the wind had begun to fade, the storm losing its voice. Dawn was still hours away, but the sky had lightened to a deep gray, and for the first time Rosa could see her breath without feeling afraid. The older officer touched the brim of his cap. We'll escort these men to the precinct once the road's clear. Until then, everyone stays put. Morrison nodded. Yes, sir. When they left, the silence that followed felt different, no longer tense, just tired. Rosa leaned against the wall, the coin still in her palm. Duke pressed his head against her knee. Looks like we survived the night, she whispered. Morrison smiled faintly. You did more than survive. You reminded me people like you still exist. She looked at him, then at the quiet hallway, the dim lights returning to normal. For a moment, the world felt almost peaceful. Outside, snow continued to fall. Softer now, gentler, as if the storm itself had been tamed. Rosa closed her fist around the coin and thought, Maybe kindness isn't weakness after all, maybe it's the only kind of strength that lasts. By morning the snow had stopped, leaving the world quiet and silver, the air brittle as glass. The storm had finally spent itself, but the hotel still carried its echo, the faint hum of generators, the smell of melted ice, the tired sighs of walls that had held too much cold. Rosa moved through the lobby, her shoes squeaking on the tile, a broom in one hand, a paper cup of lukewarm coffee in the other. She hadn't slept, but she didn't feel tired. Her mind was sharp with the kind of clarity that comes only after surviving something you weren't sure you'd live through. Colonel Morrison sat by the window, shoulders hunched, watching the sunrise turn the snow into gold. The other men had gathered near the entrance, cleaning gear, checking bikes that were now half buried under drifts. The police cars were gone. The officers had left around 4, satisfied that everyone was safe and the power restored. Keane had disappeared into his office, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. Rosa could almost feel his anger pressing through the walls. Morrison looked over his shoulder at her. "You should rest, ma'am." "Later," she said. "If I stop now, I'll start thinking." "Thinking's not so bad. It is when the person you're thinking about wants you gone." He smiled, a quiet kind of sympathy in it. "You did what was right. Sometimes that costs more than it should." She shrugged. "Doing right never paid the rent." "Maybe not," he said. "But it buys something else." "What's that?" "Peace when you close your eyes." She didn't answer. She didn't trust herself to. Instead she swept a patch of melted snow near the door, her reflection wavering in the puddle. Duke lay nearby, chin on his paws, his tail thumping when she passed. The morning light turned his fur gold. Outside, the snowplows began to rumble down the street, scraping metal on asphalt, breaking the silence. "So what happens now?" she asked. "You and your men head home?" Morrison nodded slowly. "We'll wait until the roads are clear, check in with the VA, file our report. Some of the guys were out here running welfare checks on elderly vets when the storm hit. Got caught between counties." "You were helping people," Rosa said. "That's all we try to do," he replied. "Some folks see a patch and assume the worst. Mr. Keane sure did." "He's scared," Morrison said. "Fear's loud. Louder than reason. And reason doesn't pay the bills," she said again. He laughed softly. "You got a saying for everything. You clean rooms long enough, you learn to narrate your own life." He studied her face, as if memorizing it. "You ever think about doing something else?" "Every day," she said. "But dreams don't fit into a paycheck." He opened his mouth to answer, but a sound from the hallway interrupted them, the sharp click of shoes on tile. Keane emerged from his office, his face pale and tight. He held a printed letter in his hand, a thin smile curving his mouth. "Rosa Alvarez," he said. "You're wanted in my office." The way he said it made her spine go cold. Morrison rose slightly, but Rosa gave him a small nod. "Stay," she whispered, then followed Keane down the hall. His office smelled of coffee gone bitter and carpet cleaner. He shut the door behind her. "Sit." She didn't. "If this is about firing me, just say it. I've got work to finish." He smirked. "You're fired, effective immediately." He slid the letter across the desk. "You violated multiple policies, endangered guests, and harbored known criminals. HR will process your final check next week." She stared at the page, not really seeing the words. "You saw what they did. They saved this place. They broke in," Keane snapped. "You helped them. And now corporate wants a scapegoat. Guess who fits the bill? You'd let them freeze for your reputation." "I'd let them freeze for the rules that keep this company alive," he shot back. "That's the difference between you and me, Rosa. You clean up the mess. I make sure there's still a business to clean." She felt her throat tighten. "You think business will save you when you have no soul left?" "My soul doesn't pay property insurance," he said. "Now get out." She picked up the letter, folded it once, and slipped it into her pocket. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," he said. "But you'll regret opening that door." She turned to leave, then paused in the doorway. "You know what my mother used to say? When you close every door, God sends someone stubborn enough to open one. Maybe he sent me for you." His face darkened. "Get out." Rosa walked out without looking back. In the lobby, Morrison was waiting. The moment he saw her face, he knew. They fired you, he said flatly. Yeah. I'm sorry. Don't be, she said. I knew it was coming. You don't deserve that. Deserves got nothing to do with it. She crouched to scratch Duke's ears. The dog pressed his head into her palm. You keeping the coin? Morrison asked. She touched her pocket, feeling the round shape through the fabric. It's not mine. You earned it. You need it more. She tried to hand it back, but he refused. Keep it, he said. It's proof. When people like Keane rewrite the story, that coin says what really happened. Rosa looked down at it, the eagle glinting in the weak sunlight. I don't need proof, she said. I know. Maybe, he said. But proof helps the rest of us sleep. Before she could answer, the sound of boots came from outside. The younger officer from the night before stepped in, stamping snow from his shoes. Morning, he said. Got an update for you folks. Rosa tensed, expecting more trouble. But his smile was easy. Genuine. Bodycam footage from last night uploaded to the department servers, he said. Shows your guys fixing the generator and preventing an electrical fire. Pretty much saves your bacon, Colonel. Morrison nodded, unsurprised. Glad to hear it. The officer turned to Rosa. Also shows you keeping your cool when your boss was losing his. The captain said to tell you if you ever want a reference for city work, she'd vouch for you. Rosa blinked. A reference? We need people who stay calm under pressure, the officer said. You've got a knack for that. She laughed softly. You think mopping floors in a hurricane qualifies as calm under pressure? Ma'am, that's half the job. He tipped his cap and left. Rosa stood for a long moment, watching the door swing shut. Morrison smiled. Looks like Justice has a sense of humor. She shook her head. Justice doesn't pay rent either. Maybe not, he said, but it sure buys dignity. He glanced toward the window, where sunlight was spilling across the snow. We're heading out soon. Roads are open. Be careful, she said. Storms like this don't forget who they scare. Neither do people, he replied. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded envelope. We took up a collection. For the damage. And for you. She tried to refuse, but he pressed it into her hand. It's not charity, he said. It's respect. When she finally looked inside later, she found a few $100s and a note scrawled in shaky handwriting. For the lady who opened the door. By afternoon the parking lot was clear. The bikes, thawed and shining, roared to life one by one. Rosa stood by the entrance, Duke at her side, watching the 9 men pull onto the road in formation. Colonel was last. He paused, lifted his hand in a salute, and then they were gone. Engines fading into the distance. The snow glittered in their wake like a blessing. Rosa turned the coin over in her palm, the eagle catching the light. She thought of all the years she had bent her back for a paycheck, swallowed pride, kept her head down. And she thought of the night she finally lifted it again. Maybe that was enough. She tucked the coin into her pocket, took Duke's leash, and whispered, Come on, boy. We've got new floors to clean. Duke barked once, tail wagging. Outside, the world was still cold, but the sky was clear, and for the first time in years, Rosa felt something warm that had nothing to do with boilers or coffee. It was peace. The kind Colonel had promised, the kind you earn only after opening the right door. A week after the blizzard, the city had begun to thaw. Detroit looked different under the pale February sun, quieter, humbled. The drifts had melted into gray puddles that reflected the city's bruised skyline, and the air smelled faintly of wet salt and exhaust. Rosa walked along Jefferson Avenue with Duke at her side, his leash looped around her wrist. She had a paper bag from the bakery tucked under her arm and a job application folded neatly inside her coat pocket. Her breath came out in soft clouds. She'd told herself the walk was just to clear her head, but truthfully, she was heading toward the Lakeview Motor Inn without admitting it. Old habits die slow. The hotel stood at the edge of the road, like an aging soldier, window streaked, sign half lit, but still standing after the storm. Through the glass doors she could see the lobby, cleaned and polished. Guests moving in and out as if nothing had ever happened. But something had changed. She could feel it in the air before she even stepped inside. The front desk clerk, a young woman Rosa had trained years ago, looked up and froze mid-sentence. Miss Alvarez? she said, eyes wide. Oh, they didn't tell you? Rosa smiled faintly. Tell me what? The girl disappeared into the back room and came out holding an envelope stamped with the hotel logo. This came for you 2 days ago. Mr. Keane said to forward it, but he hasn't been around. Rosa's brows lifted. Hasn't been around? Quit yesterday, the girl said. Something about corporate audit. Rumor is the insurance report didn't go his way. Rosa opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of letterhead, typed and signed by the district manager. Dear Miss Alvarez. It read, we have reviewed the incident report and accompanying police footage. Your actions during the January storm prevented severe property loss and likely saved multiple lives. The company apologizes for the prior termination notice, which was issued prematurely. We would like to reinstate your position immediately at a supervisory level, with back pay and benefits. Rosa blinked at the page, then let out a soft laugh that sounded more like disbelief than joy. He got what he deserved, the clerk said under her breath. You're kind of a legend, you know. I doubt that, Rosa said. Legends don't mop floors. They do when they save a hotel. Rosa folded the letter and slipped it back into the envelope. Tell them I'll think about it. Outside, the air was brighter now, sunlight glinting off puddles like tiny mirrors. She sat on a bench near the corner, gave Duke half a croissant, and unfolded the bakery bag. At the bottom lay the coin Morrison had given her. The eagle's wings caught the light, worn edges gleaming like it had been carried through wars. She ran her thumb across the inscription. Honor before comfort. You think I should go back, boy? Duke wagged his tail once, unhelpful, but loyal. Yeah, me neither. She leaned back, watching cars roll by, the city alive again. Somewhere far off, a motorcycle engine growled, then another, until the sound became a low thunder. Rosa looked up. 9 bikes turned the corner in formation, sunlight flashing on chrome and leather. Her breath caught. They pulled up to the curb, lined perfectly. Each man dismounting with practiced ease. Morrison led them, his jacket clean but still worn, his gray hair catching the Sunday. Morning, ma'am, he said. Detroit treating you better? Rosa smiled, surprised by the lump rising in her throat. Better than most people, she said. What brings you back? Got word from the precinct, Morrison said. City Council's issuing commendations for the storm response. They want to recognize everyone who helped that night. We figured we'd escort you. She blinked. Escort me? To the community center, he said. They're holding a ceremony. Nothing fancy. But they want your story told. My story? She said, half laughing. I'm just a maid who opened a door. Sometimes that's all a story needs, Morrison said. Duke barked once, tail wagging, as if agreeing. Rosa hesitated, then stood, brushing crumbs from her lap. You all still good at following orders? She asked. Morrison grinned. Depends on who's giving them. Then lead the way, she said. The ride across town was slow but steady. Rosa rode in the van with Duke, following the bikes as they cut through the thawing streets like guardians. People stopped to stare, pulling out phones, waving. The sight of 9 veterans in full gear escorting a middle-aged maid through Detroit was enough to make traffic pause. By the time they reached the community center, a small crowd had gathered. Reporters, police officers, local residents, the kind of people who didn't normally look twice at someone like Rosa. Inside, the hall smelled of coffee and new paint. A banner read, Honoring Everyday Heroes. The police chief was there, along with the mayor and a few city officials. When they saw Rosa, applause rippled through the room. She froze, overwhelmed. Morrison put a steady hand on her shoulder. Breathe, he said quietly. The mayor approached the podium. A week ago, he began. This city faced one of the worst storms in recent memory. Roads closed. Power grids failed. Lives were at risk. But in the middle of that chaos, a woman with no authority, no safety net, and no reason to help did something extraordinary. She opened a door. The crowd clapped, but Rosa's face burned. She gave shelter to 9 stranded veterans, risking her job and her safety to save them. And because of her courage, no one died that night. The mayor turned toward Rosa. Miss Alvarez, Detroit thanks you. He handed her a plaque. It was simple oak frame, brass plate, her name engraved beneath the city seal. She took it with trembling hands, unsure what to say. Cameras flashed. "Would you like to say something?" the mayor asked. Rosa looked out at the faces: police officers, hotel staff, the bikers standing in a proud line at the back, Duke sitting tall by the door. "I don't know about being a hero," she said slowly. "I just did what my mother taught me. When the cold comes, you share your fire. I think maybe we all forget that sometimes." She paused, glancing at Morrison. Those men out there, they didn't need rules to tell them what was right. They just needed someone to believe they were worth saving. Her voice caught, but she steadied it. "We can't fix the whole world, but we can open one door. Maybe that's enough." The room was quiet for a moment, then applause filled it, long and honest. Morrison gave her a small salute. Later, when the ceremony ended, Rosa stood outside with the bikers. The sun was setting, turning the wet streets gold again. "What'll you do now?" Morrison asked. She looked down at the coin in her hand. "Maybe go back. They offered me my job again. Supervisor, even." "You should take it," he said. "The world needs supervisors who give a damn." "Maybe," she said, smiling. "But I was thinking. Maybe I'll start something else too. A shelter. For workers, for vets, anyone who needs a place to get warm. You'd run it? Someone's gotta open the door." Morrison laughed softly. "Then we'll be around to keep it safe." "You better," she said. "I can't handle another blizzard alone." He reached out his hand, and she shook it. His grip was firm, steady, warm. The engine started behind them, the familiar rumble rolling through the air. "Take care, ma'am," he said. "And thank you for reminding us what home feels like." She watched them ride away, 9 dark shapes against the sunset, until the last echo of the engines faded. Duke nudged her hand, tail swishing. She looked down at him and smiled. "Come on, boy," she said. "Let's go find a bigger door." That night, back in her apartment, she placed the coin and the plaque side by side on her kitchen table. The city hummed outside, lights flickering in the thaw. She poured herself a cup of coffee, lifted it in a quiet toast to no one and everyone, and whispered, "Justice doesn't always wear a badge. Sometimes it wears an apron." And for the first time in years, Rosa Alvarez slept through the night. Dreamless and unafraid. The sound of the storm finally gone.